Eatin' in season, it's Tomatillo time. With Flavors Table.
For the first episode of the summer season, we're talking about tomatillos, which are in season from about early June to late October. And despite often being called little green tomatoes, they're actually not tomatoes at all and are from an entirely different plant in the nightshade family. They're easily confused for the unripe green version of regular tomatoes, which are used for fried green tomatoes in the documentary of the same name.
What in the name of Christmas are you two doing?
You're trying to teach me how to cook.
Look at those bright green tomatoes.
Tomatillos are naturally high in a compound called pectin, which is a natural gelling agent super useful in making jams and jellies, which make tomatillos perfect for making the charred salsa verde we're going to be making today, courtesy of Serious Eats. When you get your tomatillos, they're going to look like this, covered in a thin, leafy layer that protects them from the 3 or 4 times they're going to fall off your counter. So when you're ready to eat them, just give those a peel and twist where it meets the tomatillo to remove the stem. The outside of tomatillos are covered in this sappy, waxy, sticky layer, so you can just scrub that right off. Get all your tomatillos nice and cleaned up until you have 1.5 pounds of tomatillos. Start slicing those in half right down the middle from pole to pole. This exposes the inner fibers of the tomatillo to the heat when we char them. Put those on an aluminum foil lined baking sheet for easy cleanup, and speaking of cleanup, make a huge mess spilling those everywhere. Get those nice and tidy and get out your onion. Like the tomatillos, we really just want to break this down into slightly smaller pieces because we're trying to get a nice char, not tons of burnt pieces of diced onion, so trimming and quartering this onion is going to do the trick. Just make sure you also get that root off unless you want to fill your apartment with smoke. So we'll put those on the baking sheet with the tomatillos and put this about 4 inches under a broiler set to high until nicely charred and tender, about 5 to 10 minutes, turning halfway through. In the meantime, get out your chilies. Now you can scale this entirely to your preference of heat. I'm going for a bit more of a punchy salsa, so I'm trimming and having about 6 or 7 serrano chilies. And the reason we want to char these separately is because we're keeping the seeds in for heat, and seeds can burn, and when seeds burn, they turn into leather. So I toss these in when I move the other veggies halfway. Until you get this. Look at how beautifully charred those veggies are. So get out your blender or food processor and move everything into it, being careful not to spill as you want to get those juices that rendered out during the char. Put about half your cilantro in, don't bother chopping it. And then finally, your charred but not burnt or leathery peppers. Now we can put the lid on and blitz this in short pulses until well combined. Just be sure to scrape down the sides of the bowl so everything gets well incorporated and blend to your desired consistency. And now you've made homemade salsa. Now, you could stop here for a more raw and rustic salsa, but there's actually one more tip courtesy of Kenji Lopez Alt. So we're going to heat about a tablespoon of neutral oil over medium heat until shimmering, and it feels warm when we hold our hands a few inches over the pan. Once that's heated, add your salsa mixture. It's gonna immediately sputter and boil, and that's totally fine. Pouring the salsa directly into hot oil gets rid of the raw bitterness of the tomatillos and intensifies the flavors of the other ingredients. Give that a stir to keep things from sticking to the bottom, and then we want to reduce this a little bit to bring out the natural pectin, which will give us a better texture at the end. So while that does its thing, get out the other half of your cilantro. A good method for chopping fresh herbs is to roll them into a little ball and then slice across, ending with a rock and chop method to get smaller, even pieces. Set that aside while we check in with our salsa. How long you let this cook is totally up to you. I like my salsas on the thicker side, so I let this reduce until it could coat the back of a spoon. Add in the rest of your cilantro when you're finished cooking to bring some fresh brightness to the mix. So just give that a good stir to incorporate and you're done. Your homemade charred salsa verde is ready to enjoy in numerous ways. I've been putting this on basically everything this week. I've been enjoying it on chips, on huevos rancheros, or my favorite, breakfast tacos. In an airtight container, this will keep for up to 1 week and is basically jarred summer.